Well, I don't know whether we'll call it a convention. We're certainly going to have a meeting, but we're sort of following up on what happened early in the presidential primary races. As you recall, early on, I was excluded from a forum out in Iowa. It happened to be a tax group, but I have no idea why I was singled out and excluded. But we went and had a rally next door. We didn't crash the party. We didn't try to cause any problems. We just went next door, and our rally was a lot bigger than the presidential forum was. So at the national convention, we believe, since we won't have very much of a role to play there, that we'll see what kind of numbers that we have where Republicans can come together to remind the party of its promises for limited government. That's the roots of the Republican Party, and I think there's still a lot of Republicans that believe that government ought to be small and balanced budgets and free markets and all these principles that for so long now we have been neglecting.
Now, how much of this is your anger at the way you were treated?
Oh, I don't look like an angry person. I'm not an angry person because I deal in philosophy. It's a challenge in philosophy. I am determined, but it's all philosophic. It's all philosophic, and I think that we've lost our way. Our party is weak. We're losing our numbers. We're losing the election. And I think it's because we've lost our way. I mean, we've changed our foreign policy. We essentially act like Democrats. So, no, I'm not driven in any way by anger as much as frustration out of the fact that I think the Republican Party doesn't even live up to its platform. If you look at what I stand for and how I vote, I really am pretty darn close to the Republican platform and what they profess they believe in.
So philosophically, the argument is you're going to be hurting John McCain doing this. Do you care?
Yeah, but we're not going to hurt our philosophy. I mean, we're going to be asking them to reconsider their positions on taxes, on the environment, on immigration, and all these positions that the party has drifted from. And certainly, I've always challenged the foreign policy of the last several years. I'm still defending George Bush's foreign policy of the year 2000, where he wanted a humble foreign policy and no nation doing no policing the world. So all I'm asking is for people, the Republicans and conservatives, to look at what we're saying and ask our party to come back to its roots.
Well, Congressman, you're closer to these guys than I am, but I don't think they're going to do that. And so they're going to nominate a candidate who is diametrically opposed to you on a lot of these issues. What are you going to do?
But they're secondary to the people. I mean, when you deal in ideas and philosophy, you appeal to the people. And when the attitude of the people change, the government will be forced to. Whether we can be successful at the convention and have them change their platform, you're exactly right. It might not occur that quickly. But if our movement is for real, which I believe it is, this is going to continue. And the precinct organizations will continue. And as time goes on, we will have an influence on the Republican Party.
Would you run, Congressman, as a third-party candidate? I guess now with Barr in the race, a fourth-party candidate?
No, I've never planned to do that, never intended to do that. And the democratic process in this country is very biased against that. So, no,
I don't know, Congressman. I got a lot of email. We've been, promoting that you're going to be on our show. You're very good for ratings, Congressman. And not kidding, but a lot of the people say, tell him we want him to run. We want him to run. What do you say?
Well, I think that's encouraging and it's flattering, but I also know that it's hard to get on ballots. If I had not run in the Republican primary, you wouldn't be talking to me today, most likely, and I wouldn't have ever gotten into the debate. So there's a lot of exclusion of the third party. Bob Barr, I'm hopeful, will do a better job as a third-party candidate than average, but he's going to have a tough time.
But your basic premise, and the reason why you don't like what the Democrats are saying, what you don't like the Republicans are saying, leaving foreign policy out for the time being, it's just that the role of government, they're both bigger on bigger government, right?
Sure. Bigger spending, they compromise down here, and everybody's supposed to compromise. But, the Democrats want to spend on one area and the Republicans on another area. So when they come up with a bill like this week on the supplemental, they'll raise military spending and all the foreign aid expenditures. At the same time, they're going to raise domestic spending. So that's the compromise. The compromise has to be we have to cut back, balance the budget, strengthen the dollar, stop the inflation, and get back to a market economy. Otherwise, all we're going to have is trying to survive from the breaking up and of these bubbles. And now we're suffering through the housing bubble collapse.
So I assume with these collapses and real quickly in the oil companies, you would not be for a windfall profits tax as Democrats were shot down today, or federal bailout programs of any sort, right?
Absolutely not, and hopefully that's one area where we may influence John McCain is to be a little bit better on taxes, but in the past he hasn't been that good on taxes.
All righty. Congressman, always a pleasure having you. Thank you for joining us again.
Appreciate it.
Ron Paul, who tore the dust up this summer, we shall see.
Well, Ron Paul is absolutely right. I mean, the whole point of this was to be able to get that message, his message, into the debate. That was a significant thing, because that message needed to be heard. It needed to be heard by all of us, and it still needs to be heard by many, many more people. It is such a strong, powerful message that, it's big news that Ron Paul is not going to run as a third-party candidate. And that people have been emailing the mainstream media to him, hey, we want you to run, yeah. People are catching wind. And I'm not surprised that Sid Kim had the experience of the neocon coming to the Ron Paul rally to get signatures on a petition. And that's exactly why we need to continue with the rallies. And we need to continue exercising our freedom of speech and voicing our opinion. Our very strong, rooted opinion about the fact that we want real change.
Yes, you mentioned the word change, and when I bought your book, I mean, that was the question I have. I mean, we've been hearing change from Obama. If you could confront Mr. Obama tomorrow, how would you pin him down when he uses that word change?
Well, I probably wouldn't do it directly as much as I would go to his supporter if I was addressing supporters of the audience. That change means nothing. It's just a word, and it's a cliche. And just to repeat it has no meaning. You have to say, what are you going to change? And I would argue, you offer no change. You have the same foreign policy. You want more troops in Afghanistan. You're not talking about only going to war with a declaration. You don't want to deal with the monetary, financial crisis in this country. You want to keep, the system together for the benefit of the banks and the big corporations and the politicians, that argument. And what kind of change do you have on social policy? Do you care about sick people using marijuana? I mean, have you come out for that? And I would just hit him hard on the fact that he doesn't want change. He wants the status quo. And just saying it means nothing, but he has a lot of supporters. And the one time I was asked to comment about him, I actually tried to be, fairly soft on him, but concluded that we have a lot of differences. But I tried to acknowledge that his supporters and my supporters have a lot of overlap, and they do. So in declaring what I just said, I think it has to be done in somewhat of a diplomatic manner, and then to appeal to reason and say, look, if you want change, what you need is somebody that's going to make sure you're never going to have a draft, and that we're going to bring our troops home, we're going to balance the budget, we're going to have sound money. He never talks about any of that. Well, no, he probably doesn't have real solid beliefs. He will be converted when we convert his young people. That's what will convert.
Did you hear that? Yeah. He's not interested in being converted. He's set. He doesn't need to be converted. He being Barack Obama, doesn't need to change anything now. And let me finish with the Ron Paul clip here. Just a few more seconds.
The politicians in Washington don't have much philosophy, probably never will, but that's all right. That's why we have a chance by converting people's hearts and minds, and that's where we've made our progress.
Exactly. The message hits the hearts and minds of people, and that's what changes things. And that's why it's necessary for all of the Ron Paul supporters to continue to get educated and get involved on the local level, as well as considering running for office in Congress and legislation in their own states, or whatever it is that you can do to make the world a better place and get the job done, we can do it together. We can make all the thems become an us.